Don't be here when I get back, and if I hear of anything negative about me said by you, then I will go scorched earth. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Zone Stories. Today we have a story where this husband found his wife's infidelity, and his wife came clean about the cheating. Now this husband making his exit plan. Let's see what actually happened. I first met my wife 7 years ago while in college. We were in the final few semesters of our similar major when we fell in love. She had recently left a partner because he was texting with other women on social media. I had been single for over 2 years following a rough breakup of a long-term relationship. We fell hard and fast. It wasn't long before she was staying over at my apartment near every night. Upon graduation, we moved to the city together, rented our own apartment, began careers, and started building a life together. It was hard work, but having each other to lean on helped. It was us against the world. Over the next year, she began not so subtly dropping hints at marriage. At this point, I wasn't making enough money to afford a ring I thought she deserved, so I took on a second job and saved as much as I could. Months later, while on a short vacation with her and her family, I asked her to marry me. We had been together for 3 years when she said yes. Things were looking up for us. We each started new jobs with better pay and benefits. We moved into a new, better apartment and took on one of her college friends as a roommate. She's a nice girl, but she works a lot so she wasn't around much. For the sake of this post, I will refer to her as M from now on. M and my wife have a good relationship. M is a bit headstrong and very independent, as am I, so we would strong disagreement from time to time. It mostly boiled down to neither her or I wanted to be told what to do. Don't get me wrong, we liked each other well enough, but I could always count on her to oppose me on any position, big or small. Looking back, the dynamic shift that M created in my wife and I's relationship may be one of many causes of all of this, as I will try to highlight as I go. M comes from a rough upbringing. Her and her siblings were adopted by her mom and dad when she was very young. Her dad is a nice guy, but her mom has always been controlling and mentally abusive. Obviously, there is a lot of trauma there, and my wife and I did our best to be understanding and make accommodations whenever needed. I can already tell that this isn't going to translate as I intend, so I will simply say that mentally, M is on the same level of a late teenager. I don't want to harp on her, but she just doesn't understand the world through the lens of a typical adult. Because of this, M has had trouble maintaining relationships. I've witnessed her either come off too strongly or oppositely, give little effort. Each time we would have to hear about how it all blew up, while quietly knowing that she's the one who lit the fuse. To wrap this part up, I always felt that she really didn't want a relationship, and just wanted to do single girl things with her girlfriends. The problem was that her best girlfriend was engaged to me, and she would try to subtly undermine our relationship whenever possible. Moving on, we had been engaged for 6 months when I started noticing small changes in my wife's demeanor. She slowly became distant, not secretive or anything like that, just pulled back. Whenever I tried to ask about it, I would get short and cold answers. Wedding planning was essentially put on hold, and I was feeling nervous. One day, about a week before Super Bowl Sunday in 2019, she finally broke down and told me what was bothering her. She was 6 months into her new job working for a booze distributor. She had formed a crush on a coworker and began a sort of one-sided emotional affair with him. She said that she had learned that he accepted a new job and would soon be moving to a new state and didn't know what to do. I was floored by this, but I kept my cool because I didn't want to make a bad situation worse. I asked what she needed, and she told me to allow her time to think. Okay, a week later, on Saturday, I wanted to take her out, do something fun, remind her that I loved her, and that she would always have my support. I took her to a new brewery nearby that was having a food truck day. Exploring new breweries is one of her favorite things, and I thought I knocked it out of the park. We drank, ate, played games, laughed, and had a really good time. I didn't notice how often she was on her phone until looking back the next day. Super Bowl Sunday, I woke to find that she had already gotten up. She was in the living room watching TV and scrolling through her phone. I don't remember exactly how it all played out, but I eventually asked her how she was and if she had had time to think. She said that she had, and that there was something she needed to tell me. I braced myself and listened. The night before, after we left the brewery, Em had picked her up to go run a few errands. Cool, go have fun, I'm going to stay home and build this cool new Lego set I bought for myself. Em will take care of her, as she has many times before, and she will let me know if they need anything. Well, as it turned out, the errand story was a cover for what was really planned. Sober M had driven my drunk fiancé to that coworker's home, where she confessed her feelings for him. I don't know much about the guy, but what he did next has earned my utmost respect. He politely turned her down, told her that she was drunk and her physical advances were flattering. But he didn't want to get involved with anyone, since he was set to move in a week or two. She left in M's car and come home to sleep it off. After she told me this, I was devastated. Still, it's in my nature to keep my cool in situations like this, so I asked her what it was that she wanted. She said that she wasn't sure. I pressed a bit more, asking if she wanted to break up. Tears swelled in her eyes as she looked up from her lap at me, and simply nodded yes. I said a simple okay, stood up and went into the bedroom to lie down. I heard her leave not long after. I was crushed. I called some buddies and made plans to be with them that night because I didn't want to be alone. I spent the next hours crying and trying to distract myself. When the front door opened and I heard her and M walk in, I quickly collected myself, focused on the TV show playing, and tried to play it cool. At this point, I'm furious at them both. My wife for what she admitted and M for encouraging and helping her do it. Friends are supposed to talk friends out of bad decisions, especially when intoxicated. After a bit, my fiancée came into the living room where I was and sat on the couch beside me. I could tell she was looking at me, waiting for me to acknowledge her, but I wasn't sure that I could without bursting into tears again. Finally, she spoke. She told me that she was sorry, that ever since this morning, she has regretted her decisions, that she knew that what she did was wrong and hurtful, but she was willing to try to make things work between us if I was willing to take her back. I needed time to think things over, though, and I would touch base with her soon. I bounced everything off of my buddies, and the general consensus was that I shouldn't let one drunken mistake ruin what we had. It's not like they hooked up or anything, but there would need to be conditions put in place in order to protect myself. I chewed on it for a bit before I went to speak to her. I told her that I was willing to take her back, but she would need to work to rebuild the trust between us, that there will not be another chance at this if something similar were to happen again. She happily agreed to everything, and we made up. The hurt didn't go away, though. Much later on, I would come to find out two new details that weren't shared with me. One, when she left that morning, leaving me to go through all that pain alone, M had driven her back to his house. In their mind, she was rejected the previous night, because she was drunk, so maybe being sober this time would do the trick. However, he wasn't home, so she sent him a text, offering to meet up and talk now that she's clear-headed. I don't think he responded. 2. After learning that we had mended things, M told her that she was disappointed in her. But things got better for us. I kept the opinion that the hiccup was evidence that she had cold feet, something everyone told me was natural, so I did what I could to set it aside and try to move on. We were married in the fall at a beautiful winery located outside the college town where we had met. That was nearly 3 years ago now. Fast forward once more to recently, M still lived with us for going on 4 years. She's talked about finding her own place for over a year, but there were constant speed bumps pushing off her plans. My wife and I now had a dog, were advancing in our careers, and could easily afford the whole apartment ourselves. We had been waiting for M to move out and take over her space because frankly, we were running out of room. And each time M would vent about some new expensive hurdle she would have to leap, my wife and I would share a knowing glance, meaning that the wait had again been extended. After a year of waiting, we were exhausted and nearing the end of our rope. Finally, we had the idea to give M a time frame for when we would like her to move out. 60 days seemed fair and doable, so we made plans to let her know the next day. M actually handled the news well, or so it seemed. Encouraged by her own friends, she decided to take the petty route and made plans to move out over the weekend. That my wife and I had planned an end-of-summer trip to the mountains. The petty part is that she told us 4 days before we planned to leave. So, not only did we have this big trip to preparation for, but we also had to do everything we could to make sure M's things were accessible to those helping her move, and safeguard our valuables to make sure nothing gets broken or lost in the process. Cool, an inconvenience, but if it meant that we would be returning to our own place in just a few days, make it worth the struggle. The trip, as it turned out, was the beginning of the end for my wife and I was starting to notice the writing on the wall, no matter how much I wanted to ignore it. Before I dive into it, I should first share a bit more about me, and my own flaws that lead me here. Anxiety and depression are big struggles for me. My wife has always known and was accommodating whenever possible. However, COVID lockdowns made it much harder. My tolerance for social situations plummeted, electing to stay home as often as I could when we were invited out. After a while, she began being more vocal about wanting me to join her in outings. She told me that she felt abandoned sometimes, and that she was sick of coming up with excuses as to why I wasn't with her. Unfortunately, although I heard what she was telling me, it took several times for me to get the picture. I suddenly realized that the only way for me to increase my social battery was to use it more. I would need to for the sake of our marriage. But as things go, my realization may have came too late to matter. The trip itself was a good time. We did a lot of really fun things together and saw a lot of cool things. But she seemed off, present but distant. So, whenever we had free time and were looking for something to do, she would try to get me to pick something that I wanted to do. After a while of this, it sort of began feeling to me like she intended this trip as a final meal for the marriage. Like how one might spoil of a beloved pet the night before they need to be put down. I didn't want to spoil the mood, so I sat on this idea even if it ate me up inside. Returning from the trip went well. Em had moved out most of her stuff, and my wife and I were giddy with the excitement of what we planned to do with all the extra space. Besides our shared bedroom, we would each have our own room to do with whatever we please. Mine was going to be a space for my hobbies, and hers was to be a meditation or reading or yoga room. We had a few hurdles to clear before we could get started, though, and most of it revolved around Em and when she could finish clearing her stuff out. That was a month ago. It was a little over a week ago today that things started falling apart at a faster rate. I began hearing rumors claiming that Em was bad-mouthing and blaming all her problems on me to anyone who would listen. Cool, maybe I deserve it. I didn't want to stir the pot, so I kept my mouth shut. I did, however, speak to my wife about it, and she reassured me that it wasn't anything to worry about. That Em was just upset, and that she would eventually get over it. That Em genuinely likes me as a person, and I should just let her vent. Fine, I'll try not to read into it, I guess. Later that same night, my wife wanted to go see a band play at a brewery and had convinced me to go. I'm trying to be a better partner, so I'm making an effort to go to things I was invited to. It ended up being a really good time. But this is when I learned about my wife's work event coming up. It was scheduled for this last Wednesday, and she was complaining about the meeting format. She works in the booze industry, so of course it was a cocktail party, and she was expected to try all these new products. She was worried about how she was going to get home without an Uber, and she didn't think she'd be reimbursed for it. I reassured her, saying that I would be available to pick her up if needed, but to be safe anyway. Still, she didn't want to get roped into too much of the event, and said she would try to leave as early as possible, hoping to be home before 7. As the night grew on and 7 came and went, I sent her a text, asking if she was still okay. No response. I didn't want to come off as worried, even though I was, so I waited half an hour before trying again. She replies a few minutes later that she's fine, and she is bonding with some coworkers. Cool. At least she's not in a ditch somewhere. I reiterated that I was available if she needed, or I can call her in Uber when she was ready. She said thanks, and that she had switched to beer, so she should be ready to leave soon. That was at 9:30 p.m. Around 11, I reach out again asking if she's on her way. It's getting late, and we both had to work the next morning. She responded with soon. I said okay, but I'm getting sleepy, but don't want to go to bed until you're home. The last text I received from her that night said, "Welp, I couldn't sleep last night without you, but I did it." Fair. I had fallen asleep on the couch watching TV with the dog. She never sleeps well when it's happened before. I took my chastising and left it at that. But I would still stay up until she made it home. It's now 1:45 a.m. She's still not home. I decided to call her. No answer. I call again. Nothing. I text her and say that I think it's time to come home. I ask her to call me back so that I know she's okay. Nothing. I set a timer on my phone for 15 minutes to try again in case I fell asleep. The pattern repeats for an hour until I finally passed out, once again on the couch with the dog. I was awoken by my alarm at 7 a.m. It takes me a minute to pull myself together, and then I hear the TV on in the bedroom. There she is, asleep in bed. Relief floods me, but so does anger. I calmly woke her and asked her what happened. She sleepily mumbles something about not being allowed to have her phone out on the casino floor. This was confusing for me, because this is the first I had heard about a casino. I've only ever known her to go to a casino once before years earlier. Before I can ask anything further, she says that she's late for work and needs me to take care of the dog while she gets ready. I made a mental note to revisit the topic later that evening. The whole day I felt off about everything. Why would she do what she did? Why didn't she wake me when she got in? I did what I could to keep invasive thoughts at bay, but I couldn't shake it. That sinking feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. When she made it home that night, it took everything I had to not jump into it right then and there. I played it cool and tried to behave normally. I did notice, however, that she was avoiding eye contact and hardly said much at all. When she did speak, it was to inform me that she had a call scheduled with an old girlfriend who lives out of state, and that she was going to go on a walk while she talked. The call was normal a thing, the walk wasn't, but it was a nice day, so I figured that was her motivation. An hour later, she's back and says that she has a couple tasks to finish up before she's free for the night. We had planned to watch a new episode of a show we like after that. When she was finished, she said that she needed to take a shower that night, so we would need to leave her time for it. I said that I understood, but couldn't stop myself from asking again about what had happened the night before. She said she would tell me after the show. Okay, we watch. I'm not really enjoying it because I can't focus, and she's obviously very nervous. As soon as the credits roll, she jumps up and says that she needs to go take her shower. I'm left waiting again and I'm not sure what to do. All these scenarios are playing over in my mind, and I can't get over it. Finally, maybe another hour later, she appears and sits on the floor near me. After a few moments of silence, I look over to her and she sheepishly makes eye contact before looking away again. Understanding that I will have to pry a bit, I say, well, I guess I'm ready for you. I'm going to try my best to make sure everything is as accurate as possible, but honestly a lot of the event is pretty fuzzy in my memory, because it all happened so fast and I was so upset. Wife, I'm sorry about last night. Pause. I had too much to drink with some coworkers. Pause and deep breath. And I cheated. In this moment, I had every emotion all at once. I kept my cool though as to not escalate things into something regretful. Wife, we were all hanging out in the parking lot of the casino. I had been flirting with one of the guys, and as more of the group started to leave, he and I ended up making out. A lot. And I cheated. I'm going to need details here. Wife, well, we made out in the back seat of his car, and I did this. Why? Wife, because I have a crush on him, and I have for some time. Okay, so what do you want? Wife, honestly, I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. Okay, here's what is going to happen now. I'm going to go walk the dog. I'm going to take a longer route than I normally do. You should take that time to collect anything you might need for tomorrow. Please don't be here when I get back. I'm going to be discreet about all of this. I will not tell anyone what has happened for now. But if I hear of anything negative about me said by you, then I will go scorched earth. I don't want to, but I will. She said that she understood and started packing a bag. It's been just the dog and I since. However, I did lie to her a bit. I called a buddy and told him what had happened. He makes sure I was alright and not planning to do anything stupid. It was nice to have that support. The next morning I sent her a text. Essentially, I said that I would appreciate it if she would give me a heads up if she needed to come by the apartment. That I understood and respect that it is her apartment, too. But a heads up would be appreciated. Additionally, I proposed that we set up a meeting in a few days after we've had time to process. She responded that she agreed to those terms and was free on Sunday, so tomorrow morning I will see my soon-to-ex-wife for the first time since. I feel so raw, as though none of this is really happening, and everything will go back to normal soon. But I need to keep reminding myself that this woman hurt me. Yes, I have flaws. Yes, those flaws caused hardship many times. But I would never disrespect someone that I once chose to marry like that. I don't think that there's any coming back from this, and I'm worried about what she will or is doing to protect herself. If I had my way, it would be a non-contested divorce. Just get it done and over with as pain-free and quickly as possible. If things get messy, it'll leave both of us in financial ruin. I plan on bringing this up to her tomorrow, so everything right now is on pause until I can get a feel for this new environment I find myself. If you made it this far, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I'm looking for support, suggestions, recommendations on how I should take my next steps. Anything you may be able to share. Thank you. I think he handled the final discussion quite well. But he definitely needs the support of his friends and family, as well as some serious counseling. he shouldn't take her back, and make sure he take care of himself.